Welcome to the Homegrown podcast, a place where we share the truth about food and farming from our kitchen to yours. I'm your host, Liz Hazelmeyer, along with my husband, Joey.
Good afternoon.
And together we hope to educate, inspire, and equip you in your pursuit of true nourishment. Today's guest is Emily and her husband, Jason. Emily Morrow is the creator of Really Very Crunchy, a sketch comedy account with over 3 million followers across platforms and more than 2 billion views on her videos. Emily's new book, Really Very Crunchy, The Beginner's Guide to Removing Toxins from Your Life Without Adding Them to Your Personality, is available everywhere March 12th. Emily and Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on. I have to say, we don't usually tell people who we're recording with ahead of time, but I threw up a little question box on Instagram and like hundreds of messages. Everyone was so stoked to hear from you guys. They're like, this is the collaboration we need. So people are going to be so excited to hear this. I want to first say, speaking of your book, that it is absolutely phenomenal and everyone needs to go get it whenever it's out on March 12th. So just a little plug in the beginning.
Thanks so much.
I love how much of your story you share in there. So I want to dive into that a little bit today. And I think that's a good place to start. So I'd love to hear where your crunchiness began.
The origin story. So I have kind of been crunchy in different areas. I guess it started with food. Jason and I were living in an RV, and we were living off of royalties from his self-published novels. We were just traveling around the country, not crunchy, traveling around the country with no real goal, just seeing what we could see. And we were broke. And I decided
they're really good books, I'm telling you.
We had like $600 to live one month, but it cost $600 to fill up our tank. So we really needed to figure out how we could eat. And I just kind of Googled like how to save money on food without being a crazy coupon lady. And I read this article that said, only buy things that have 5 ingredients or less. And I had never really looked at the ingredients on the food that we were consuming. The only thing I knew about the nutritional panel was like calorie count, you know? And so we cut out a lot of food from our diets just by following that. And it forced us to buy whole foods because in the processed food world, it's kind of hard to get something with fewer than 5 ingredients. So my food journey into the crunchy world started there. And then like the chemical toxins and talk about like just using cleaner products started much later, probably 5 years after that. I gave a friend a budding friendship. I gave this girl some hand soap for her birthday, and she pulled it out and she said, "This is so toxic." And she was being so, like, she's such a sweet person. I don't think she meant it that way, but I think she was just caught off guard by the toxins.
It's because you didn't sing happy birthday to her, probably.
I mean, I had a linen tea towel. Sure, that linen could, you know, counterbalance that. Anyway, I had never heard somebody refer to something as toxic. So then she told me about this app that I could download and find out how horrible everything is that I'm using in my life. And so that's kind of how that started. And then whenever I had kids, I thought, okay, I'm responsible for making decisions for them and that will affect their lifelong health and longevity. So I better do it right. So everything else kind of just, it all came to a head there, I guess. When I had children, you know, I was focused on their health and using the right products and then eating good foods. And so, you know, it's sort of a slow transformation.
So she really
through several avenues.
She gave you a gift on her birthday.
Yes.
The ultimate
gift of knowledge.
Was anyone else around when she opened your birthday present? Like, was this in front of a... Okay, so there were witnesses?
Was she really? I didn't know that.
Oh, there were witnesses.
Just my mom, yeah.
Okay.
But she didn't really pay attention to it.
Okay.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Yeah, Emily, do better.
Words you always want to hear from your mother, I'm sure. As a child, what were you like as a child? Did you dive headfirst into topics? Were you like super fascinated, or were you whimsical? Like, tell me, what was young Emily like?
Wow. There's a lot there.
Yeah. I mean, how far back do you want to go?
As much as relevance, I guess.
I wonder if, because to be crunchy, and we'll talk about this later in the show of what that actually means, but to live a life where you're willing to research and really do your due diligence, you have to have some level of curiosity and like almost work ethic. I don't know. It's like it's not easy to live this way all the time, and it's so much easier to just blissfully float about life and not really consider the consequences. And like for me as a kid, I don't know that I ever really harnessed those skills until I had to, so I'm curious with you, were you always like, oh, I'm always reading and I'm always researching, or was this like a budding skill when you needed it to be there?
Yeah, I'm not even sure I read a book until high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not a reader, but I was really curious.
Yeah.
And I had a big imagination. I was a like perpetual people pleaser. But I also had a really great work ethic, probably because of the people pleasing. But I remember finding out that the name Emily meant something like great work ethic or something. And I was so disappointed because I was like, really? Not like graceful or beautiful. It's like hard worker. But it fit. So, yeah, so I agree. I have often like examined my life as an adult and looked at the areas that I find that I feel discontentment, or that I lean towards comparing myself, which I really try not to compare myself, but like it's inevitable that you're just going to compare someone else's life. And I think, well, man, they have it just so much better. Why do they have it so much better in this area? Whether it's like sleep or travel or just eases of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it comes down to the daily choices that I make for reasons that I have chosen, like eating healthy. It's not easy to just, if you're going to plan ahead, it's not easy to just take off and go and, oh, well, we'll just pick up food on the way. Or, if you want to plan ahead, then you have to pack the food and you have to be prepared. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to stop and do that occasionally, whatever. But there are sacrifices there. You're right. It takes grit and it takes hard work to stick to your convictions.
Totally. 100% it does. I'm curious, since you made this transformation kind of slowly over 5 years, and it wasn't necessarily your personality when you guys met. Jason, how did you take into account the changes that Emily was advocating for? Were you ever resistant to her change? How did that work?
Not really, actually, just because everything was so gradual. And like she said, it started from kind of like which you wouldn't actually think of crunchy when you just look at it on the surface as like the cheapest option. And crunchy wasn't even really the term when I knew of back then. We were coming from a financial standpoint where like, okay, yeah, my books are not doing that great, let's save some money on some groceries. Oh wow, this also makes us feel a little better. Wow, that's cool.
Like we weren't bloated and we didn't have heartburn, and so we could see the physical transformations together.
Yeah. And I mean, prior to that, we had also lived in Korea and just had seen a lot of the world and how different cultures approach different things in health. Like, for instance, we were in Korea, there's these outdoor gyms and everything just sitting there and people were using them all the time at the top of mountains, actually. So, and most of the time they were older people too. It was pretty awesome. So just seeing those kinds of things, obviously going in from a point of necessity, and over time, it was a very gradual thing. So there wasn't really much to resist. I would say, I mean, if I did have any resistance, it was probably when we started having kids.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, there wasn't a lot of resistance as much as just like, oh, why do we have to do this? Like, this is so much. And I don't have a specific example on that, but no.
Like not using pacifiers. I was like big on not using pacifiers for my first kid. By my second kid, I was like, screaming. Please take a pacifier.
He's screaming, though. I mean, we have to.
Neither of them ended up ever being interested in them. But so, yeah, like I was into baby wearing, and basically that requires me, you know. So I think, yeah, you were just like, I didn't know this was how parenting was going to be. Like, you have to be around the baby because you have to nurse the baby all the time, on demand, whenever they want, co-sleeping and stuff like that. I think you just, you weren't really resistant.
No, it just, because it was so gradual, and I more so I just didn't understand everything. And neither one of us come from a background of like, baby wearing and all talking about all natural things. Like, no, I grew up on Cheez-Its and Pop-Tarts, and so
Jason was bottle propped.
Yeah, apparently. I'm okay though.
That's always my thing. I'm like, you were bottle propped.
I'm okay, I think. But I don't know where that threw me right there, actually.
Well, I wanted to ask, because that is one of the biggest pushbacks we get all the time, is like, not pushbacks. I would say it's something I hear from women when they're like, listen, I really want to pursue a healthier lifestyle. I want to eat real food. I want to do XYZ. I want to homeschool. And they're like, how do I convince my spouse? And there's a real tension point there. And I think, just gleaning wisdom from your experience, it sounds like when we gradually give them the information, and when the benefit to the family is hyper evident, like, wow, we feel better, we're saving money on groceries, like, who's going to argue with that? That is the approach that is most of the time successful, because it is really hard when both parents or both spouses are not on the same page about your lifestyle, because it infiltrates everywhere. I mean, Joey one time tried to come home with a bottle of canola oil, and I said, who are you? Get out my house.
How could you?
I
mean,
know.
That's 101, man.
Okay,
Come on.
Okay.
I know. Thank you. We've told that story so much on the podcast.
So I went to culinary school, okay? And so I was working in restaurants, and I was working in the industry, and it was just, this was the standard. Yeah. And it was like...
You knew, though. You knew.
I probably did know.
Anyway,
know better, do better, Joey.
I know. At the end of the day, I'm just anything I could do to really tick her off. Buy some canola oil, and that'll put me in the lead on the I don't know, game that we're playing here. I don't buy canola oil.
Not after that one time.
Okay, I can.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean,
this has nothing to do with
just
the
throw out
products.
anything.
Let me just tell you, you can never ever top this. As a co-sleeping mom who was nursing her newborn through the night constantly, one time Jason took the baby out of the room for like an hour to give me a nap, came back, and the way he chose to wake me was to flick me in the forehead. Like, pup, 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 pup. Time to get up, Emily. So canola oil is nothing.
Listen.
You are clean. You will never live it down.
No, we have this conversation about every other day. It still comes up. If we're ever arguing about something, hey, you flicked me on the forehead. She didn't even have to say anything. She just starts flicking her own forehead, and it's like, okay, you're right. I'm sorry, dear.
What was your thought process?
No record of wrongs except for flicking.
There's still bruising.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, it wasn't hard. It wasn't like, bam. It was just.
What? A stroke of the hair. Could have been nice. Like, you could have stroked her hair. You could have.
Yeah, I know.
Sweetie.
Was it like, okay, what time of day was it? Was this in the middle of the night? Like,
I really don't even
know. Were you
know.
thinking clearly?
It was evening. Actually, I was getting my graduate degree. I had to drop out because I couldn't handle it with a baby. But I was like, I had a night class and he was trying to let me get a little rest before the class. So he was waking me up so that I could get on for my class.
It was a love tap.
That's what that means.
No, it was idiotic is what it was. I apologize publicly to everyone listening. I
like this. I like this. Any other grievances? So we got the flicking of the forehead, the $3 bottle of canola oil that she threw away immediately, by the way, and like told our kids, your father is just really blowing it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta go stand in the corner, the whole thing.
No, it's so inaccurate. Well, I'm happy to hear you guys have mostly gotten over the whole forehead flick of whatever year that was, because that sounds traumatic. And I'm also happy to hear that you are on the same page generally when it comes to crunchiness. I will tell you, and I think you described this really amazing in the book, and I want you to reiterate that here, but everyone's question was like, is she really that crunchy? And then their second question was like, is Jason really okay with it? Is he really that crunchy? And I think sometimes people forget that like you're a comedy like skit channel, and because the influencer world of Instagram is wild, and we can get into that later. But there's a I'm making a commentary or making a comment on what the crunchy mom would do or say in a hyperbole, right? A very exaggerated version. And then there's like no real life Emily that maybe I would make similar decisions. Like I have to be somewhat crunchy to write the skit, because that was one of my first thoughts when your account first showed up. I was like, oh, she really knows her stuff. Like, I guess she's making light of these issues, but like she really knows her stuff. And so break that down for people, just in case they're unfamiliar and they're like, they see this side of you on Instagram. Who is the real Emily, and what is the Instagram all about?
Sure. So it all started because probably Jason going along with me so much, he even though he was like on board, he has still thought I was crazy. And so he wanted to make a TikTok. We've always sort of been into content creation. Like when we lived abroad, we made videos about living in Korea. Like we've always done this. But he heard a podcast that said 2022 was the year of TikTok. If you were going to make that a full-time job, then you needed to do it in 2022. So, and he was like telling me about this. He was excited, but he didn't know what like niche he should explore. And he's like, let's just make fun of you. Like, it's such an easy target. And I don't think anybody's doing this kind of comedy. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I am pretty crazy. I am. So,
well, it was just like every other day. It felt like I would come home from work and, hey, I got this, I don't know, sauerkraut with artisanal well water or something. I don't know. Insert anything here. It's like, okay, and over time, once just mulling this over, the content creation stuff, I'm like, this is perfect. Like this is just fodder for comedy. And you look on Instagram, you see the wellness and crunchy moms on there and stuff. There's not a lot of comedy. It's a very serious space. And I thought like, this could be, there's an opportunity here.
So basically in the beginning, he's like, just be yourself. Like, just do it. So I was just writing all the skits on my own.
Yeah, because I don't know any of this stuff. It's like I know we can make fun of this. You do sort of have to write this because I have no idea what you're talking about. And so that's
So I was just coming up with all of it, just like, so what is happening in my day? Oh yeah, that's funny. A lot of times, like, the best inspiration for my videos is just I'm living in a moment and I'm like, this is hilarious.
However, I will say though that we did take the approach, even just from the very beginning, like this is the person you see online is Emily with no filter and no flexibility, no ability to really reason in her own mind that oh, well, maybe I could make a concession here, or maybe,
this
because
is not socially acceptable to
for the sake of comedy, putting her in a socially unacceptable situation, like you would never say this to a human being. You might have a thought like that enters your mind, like, should this be the way something is or not, or whatever, but she just says it all, like, to the person, the character
and the character is judgmental. I'm not in real life, because
not as much now, though, like,
not as much. I mean, we still do. I actually cringe at every even slightly judgmental video we do. Like, we just released a crunchy or not today, and you should see me before we put these out. I'm like, is this going to hurt someone's feelings? Is this going to throw somebody into panic? I don't want to affect anyone negatively. I don't want to. And Jason's like, Emily, it's a comedy channel. Like, if people can't tell it's a comedy channel by this point, then they really are just kind of clueless. But
it has morphed, though. Like,
it has.
It was never the intention to be educational. The intention was always like, let's make people laugh. Let's have fun with this. And I mean, the book itself was born out of how many hundreds of messages did you get? Just like a question about water, a question about baby wearing, a question about anything. So many, just one after the other. And now it's, for better or worse,
we have a resource to say, I mean, it is kind of a weird spot. I still, like, I feel like my online presence, I still want it to stay as a comedy platform, but I am putting out this very real educational book out there, but it's infused with enough comedy that I hope it keeps people laughing. But there is still real information, which in my skits there is still real information. But I feel like what my platform does is, like, says, here's a topic, go inform yourself.
Totally.
So, and I feel like my book does that a lot too. Like, here are things you should think about. Here's an option, but it's ultimately up to you to inform yourself. But anyway, me in real life, I would say I'm probably the crunchiest person I know, but then there have been aspects of my, like, motherhood and life that aren't crunchy. I had hospital births. That's like a huge no-no in the crunchy community, I mean, I would love to have a home birth. It didn't work out for me. I wasn't even planning it whenever I had my kids. So definitely not the crunchiest there, but I really do wear only natural fibers.
But at those times too, you were also not fully,
as crunchy,
comprehending of, like, what, the things that
I've become more crunchy since starting my platform, because I, like, say something and people are like, know better, do better, learn this.
And you had to research to write, and you're like,
I've had to research things.
What is this?
Yeah.
It's made it worse.
Well, I totally agree, because I feel like the same way for me. I was like, I started out having a passion around nutrition and breaking down, like, whole real foods for people in a way that was approachable. And I always loved the Weston A. Price Foundation for their approach to real food, but I felt like sometimes it didn't speak to me how I wanted to be spoken to, or I just wanted my own spin on it. And so, but as I started sharing, I'll tell you, like, I never learned more about sourdough than when I released a sourdough guide. Like, we've had that thing downloaded by 50,000 people. And then it's not only just like the questions, the follow-up questions that they get. I learned through all of that. And I feel like, oh, now I know more about sourdough after having written this thing about sourdough. So I'm totally with you on that. It's this weird, like, you're in the fire getting sharpened because, like, you're in there providing the content, but you're also being exposed to all these questions and, like, what about this perspective and what about that? And it makes you constantly have to reevaluate, or not even reevaluate necessarily, but just dig deeper and learn more.
Like the ultimate groupthink. You post something, everyone tells you exactly how you're wrong, and then you go back and you think, were any of them right?
Oh my gosh.
Maybe 1 out of 1,000 was actually, like, giving you some good information.
Painful. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm with you there. It reminds me of what you say in the book, which it is very funny. You do a great job of, like, sharing a story about your life and then, like, digging into some very actionable topics. But you say in the book, like, crunchy is a spectrum, right? And so it's not like, oh, I know you do these videos, like, are you crunchy or not? But the Emily that had her babies was a different version than Mitch, who you are today. And I think we have this thing on the podcast where we talk about a real food journey, right? Your relationship with food and eating whole real foods is a journey, and same thing with being crunchy. And so I like that you can strike a balance by giving people an option to say, here's your spectrum. Where do you fall on any given topic? It's not a black and white. And you can be flexible. I think that's the biggest thing that people will be encouraged to read in your book is how flexible you are in real life, really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely think crunchy is such an umbrella term that, like, say I'm friends with Jenny Urich, the creator of 1,000 Hours Outside. She wouldn't call herself crunchy, but she spends 1,000 hours outside. Like, that's a pretty crunchy thing to do. So to me, she's definitely on the crunchy spectrum, but she would never say like that she doesn't have Doritos in her pantry right now. So yeah, it's just like, what's a priority for your family and where do you want to make healthier choices? And that's totally up to you. And the only person you have to convince that you're doing your best is you.
Totally.
How would we define crunchy? I'm just interested with this group here. How we define the term crunchy.
Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, go for it.
So it came from where, you know, the hippie type person would make their own granola. Granola is literally crunchy. So that's kind of where it evolved from. To me, it's just someone who's interested in a more natural way of life. So whether it's spending a lot of time outside or eating whole foods, getting back to your roots, just a more holistic, natural living. You're kind of aware of a natural way of life.
But it's just a term.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's, I would say most people who fall into crunchy things probably don't even know what the term crunchy is. I've probably never even heard of it. You know, it's like, I don't know, kind of like dude or something. It's like, what's up, dude? Hey, crunchy, how's it going?
And you know, like people in other countries, like in Korea, they eat a lot of fermented foods. I would say like Koreans are generally just naturally crunchy because their culture is, but they would never call themselves crunchy.
I love it. I was even thinking crunchy could be, it's almost like it evolves with time, this term crunchy. So it's like at one point in time, crunchy means that the only thing that kind of travels with it is you're against some typical or norm or conventional way.
Oh yeah.
And so someone like that would be like a crunchy version of today would look different than a crunchy version of in the 40s, right?
Oh, for
and
sure.
the crunchy person tends to get called names, right? Of like tin hat person or conspiracy theorist, or like these things can happen, I think. And so like the example of Korea, right? These folks, if there was someone that was in Korea that was crunchy, I think, again, this is me. I think, I'm not saying this is real. I mean, you guys are really very crunchy. So I have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's almost like their crunchy version might be that, I don't know, these gyms, they only use the gyms that are in their house so they can sterilize them. I don't know. I can't.
It's like the opposite.
I'm stuck on this idea of like traveling down the road and there's just like a gym out there with like barbells and like I was like, are there plates? Like,
it's got to be like an outdoor
deadlifting out in the middle of the woods.
You know, like the calisthenic gyms, but they do have options for weights. Like, you can click it into a certain spot in the.
And it's just free.
It's just free.
It's just free.
Yeah,
it's just out there rusting.
We have one in Paducah. We have one in Paducah, Kentucky. Nobody
uses it in Paducah. No, it's just
a roadside Bowflex.
We just pay taxes for those kind of things. We don't use them. But
how silly of us! I know, right? Yeah.
No, they were always full in Korea, no matter what the season, too.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I think.
Anyhow, crunchy. I feel like it's this version of X.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with you because I feel like it can get really political there. And I think crunchy should sort of be removed from that. Like that's one thing we try to do in our content is stay very neutral, because there are so many people from every walk of life that identify with our content, like our holistic living. But there is definitely the conspiracy theorist side. There is someone in that there's like an overlap, but I don't think that makes them crunchy. But there is a lot of overlap in there. But yeah, especially with homesteaders.
We're very intentional about being neutral, just because it does fall on both sides completely. Because at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is going back to basics of life, simplifying life. And
that's true.
That falls across the whole spectrum of politics, whatever, anything. So
I love it. I agree. Yeah. That makes sense to me too.
I just feel like everything is so polarized already that
people try to polarize crunchiness. Yeah. They really try to.
They do. People try to. There's an entire account that talks about how crunchy is conspiracy, and
that really sort of painting it as that's all it is. And it's not.
Trying to make healthier choices for your family doesn't make you a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. I agree. I've run into those accounts too, and they frustrate me, to say it lightly. Because I think it's just they're almost trying to paint you, like, if you are trying to do something that is quote natural, they'll say it's a fallacy, and they'll just paint you as uneducated, when really I know I've spent hours and days and like countless effort researching, reading, talking to people. So if that's uneducated, then it's confusing to me. Just because my perception of what my family is, what our health looks like, is different from yours, doesn't mean that I have to be a conspiracy theorist. So I really, it's frustrating for people to like group you into that. But
then there are people who say that like toxins aren't even real. We shouldn't be using that. Like a toxin isn't real. It's like, what do you?
Well, water is a toxin,
or everything's a chemical.
Yeah, everything can kill you if you have enough of it. Water, if you have too much water, it can kill you. It's like, okay.
Yeah, but there actually are harmful things.
True.
Yeah.
So where do you draw the line?
Well, and this is where I love talking about history, because I feel like people want to get all spin up about their current opinions, and they forget that they're living in modern day America, let's assume, and in their own little echo chamber. And they completely forget the historical relevance of a type of food, a type of medicine, a way of thinking, a type of education. And so for me, if I'm like, let's just look at history and peel back the layers, because a lot of times, like raw milk's a great example. Everyone wants to fight about the foodborne illness. And I'm like, if you learn the history of raw milk, you will learn that the decision to pasteurize milk is more political than it is a decision for your safety. And that there's a way to produce safe whole raw milk, but it might look different than going to the grocery store and buying it off your shelf. So it kind of removes you out of that political slew of just like, oh, let's talk about if you should have a right to this or if you should protect the public. It's just like history tends to be an anchoring thing, but then you have to ask, who's telling the history. So that also gets a little dicey. Gosh, we could like go so. One of my questions for you guys was like, in modern America, what are some of the things that could stand to be a little more crunchy? Like in general, is there an overarching thing that like, let's get back to the basics here on this one?
I'm probably most passionate about the overuse of screens. There is too much screen time happening.
Yeah.
Government entities at B say that kids shouldn't get more than 2 hours of screen time, ages 6 to 17. So shouldn't be getting more than 2 hours per day.
To 17?
To 17 is the recommendation. Okay. And
that's
kids in that age range, on average, are getting 7.5 hours of screen time per day. And that's not including educational screen time. So like,
that's just like after school, right? On their iPads.
The whole day. So not only is that affecting our brains, there are certain studies that show that certain types of screen time have such large dopamine releases that it's equivalent to like heroin.
Wow.
So the addictiveness is so extreme and so high. It is rewiring our brains and affecting our brains. There's one study that I talk about in my book. They found that children ages 3 to 5, if they get more than the recommended 1 hour per day of screen time, their brains have less white matter, which is the area responsible for language development, literacy, and cognitive development.
Wow.
And so then, like, we look at all these kids who have language issues and learning delays, and then we're like, well, why?
Mm-hmm.
We're watching too much. We're using screens way too much. Kids aren't playing enough. Kids are so, like, they don't even know how to play. Kids sit there and watch videos of other people playing. I don't understand that. Like, I've never been able to understand that. But we have just robbed our kids of childhood from the start of iPads, I think. Like, it has just pacified children. It is easier in a lot of ways to just give kids their screens, because then they'll sit there and they'll be quiet and they don't make messes. But like, there is definitely a cost. I feel very passionate about the overuse of screens. So definitely that is one of them. I don't think they're evil. I think there are a lot of learning opportunities. So many good educational programs. People are just giving way too much of it to their kids.
Totally.
So
I love that.
Yeah. So that's one of them.
Well, you miss out on opportunities to, like, as a parent, I mean, if you're pacifying your kid with screens all the time, you know, whether you're out to eat a dinner or something, it's like, well, I don't want him to scream, so here's a screen. I mean, there's teaching moments you're missing out on. There's one-on-one conversations you miss out on. Just that family connection too. I mean, keep all the brain stuff aside, there's a lot of connection that's not happening together. And I don't know how you would even quantify that. I don't think you can necessarily, but I mean, you know, it exists because I mean, we've seen, and we're not judging when we say this, but we've seen kids just like always just have their screen with them and their little like satchel handle
iPad,
it's like,
and they just take it everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of learning opportunities, social skills, but yeah, you're right. Like, the familial bond is totally being affected.
Or with their peers too.
Yeah.
I mean, just around them. And I mean, you talk about in the book too, we were at this thing and our kids were being watched by someone else, right? I think. And we walk in and our kids are next to this one kid on his iPad, just watching him on his iPad, just like, wow, this is amazing. I was like, okay, we got to figure this out.
It was at an event that had childcare, and it was in a room with toys and a teacher.
But to my point is, like, those kids aren't playing together.
Yeah, they're
watching a kid touch a screen. You know, they're not building a peer relationship at all. So, I mean, I think it wrecks relationships with families, kids, peers. It's, I mean, the occasional use, of course. I mean, that's normal. But the amount it's being used today, it's a crutch for adults to be able to do what they want to do. Without having to correct children or, you know, be parents or instructors or whatever. I don't know. I could go on too. I feel a little passionate about it as well.
Our palms are sweating over here.
I am sweating. I'm like, I need to put a bandana, my Rambo bandana over my head.
I think it's possible it limits your kid's capacity for socialization and articulation, but also it's possible it could limit the parent's capacity for, you guys brought it up, but for managing your children and your family dynamic. When I went out to eat with my parents, not that I was like scared of my parents, But like there was no iPads, there was no phones, there was no here, watch this YouTube video while we wait for our biscuits to show up. It was just like I'm gonna sit close to dad, and like dad's right there, and like if I get out of line, like dad's right there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna get out of line. You know what I'm saying? And I knew that because I must have gotten out of line at some point at the restaurant, and we learned what happens when you get out of line. Totally. And I just think that there's this parental relationship with your kids, everything from like learning discipline and how to have self-control and self-reliance and to self-soothe. And it's like your kid's throwing a huge tantrum. It's like, man, sometimes that's a good opportunity for your kid to learn how to deal with emotions.
Yeah.
And man, my kid's having a tantrum, give him an iPad. And it's like I don't know. I think that there's possibly benefits. Definitely don't want to demonize anybody that's out there, because man, life is tough. It is.
It's hard.
It is. But it's getting through it at some point or another. It's keeping your kid alive, well fed. I mean, there's so many ways.
But both options are hard. And like, this is what I always feel like gets misconstrued. It's like, it's the same thing with food. It's hard to cook real food from scratch or any version of that. It's also hard to only eat processed foods and then suffer from the consequences when they eventually catch up with you. It's hard to resist the urge to lean on screens more so than we need to. And it's also hard when you have a screen addicted child who that is now something you have to break, and you are suffering the consequences of maybe a shortened attention span or less connection, or you honestly just feel stuck as a parent, like I'm doomed if I do and I'm doomed if I don't, So pick your heart, like choose your heart. I hate that. It's such a overused sentiment, but it really is true. And I think that falls in line with a lot of quote crunchy categories, right? Is like,
for sure,
everything has a consequence. And it's just, to me, crunchy, I almost feel like it's intentionally choosing the consequences we want out of life instead of just passively letting them roll by. I want to be close with my children. I want my children to have close relationships with each other. I'm going to homeschool. That's a consequence I want of homeschooling. I want to eat really good food and be able to work out and be strong and build muscle. I'm going to cook from scratch at home. And then therefore I get the beneficial consequence of doing those things. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I agree. I think,
it's hard.
No, go ahead. You go.
I think one thing I didn't realize when I was younger is that if somebody has a strength in an area, that didn't happen on accident. Yeah. Like, people aren't fit on accident. It's not just their genetics. They might be more easily able to get fit because of genetics, but if you are eating whole nutrient dense foods, that's not on accident. Somebody, like, there's a choice there. So I love what you're saying. Yeah, it takes intentionality and it takes priority. And sometimes you can't make the choice because you don't know. Like, I totally would have been someone to hand my kid an iPad because that's what all my peers around me have done. But I happened to meet someone who said they weren't going to let their kid watch TV before they were 2. And I was like, really? Why? And then I learned about it and I made my own choice. But when you don't know, you can't make those choices necessarily. So yeah, it really does stink that we've been kind of set up for failure.
Yeah, I totally agree.
What did screen time look for you guys growing up?
I watched TV. Well, we didn't have cable, so there wasn't really anything to watch. He had cable.
Nickelodeon every afternoon, man.
I used to stand outside my neighbor's front door and try and see what was on Nickelodeon just so I could have something to talk about at school. Like, hey, did you see Clarissa Explains It All or whatever, one of those shows I never got to see?
This is the extended version of what were you like as a kid?
Well,
I was just outside of my neighbor's window. Watch Nickelodeon.
Their mom was a smoker, so sometimes they would prop the front door open and she'd sit and I could hear it.
And get secondhand smoke. It was awesome.
Perfect.
Great.
Yeah. Felt like
beautiful.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
But
now
I watched Family Matters after school, and
I'm not sure kids of the 90s had much of a varying screen time experience. I mean, you guys may be different. I shouldn't speak for everybody, but it seemed pretty normal. Everybody, you have your Saturday morning cartoons. You have, when you get into teenager stuff, you have TGIF, I guess. You know, my parents, I mean, every evening the TV's just blaring. I don't know how it is today since everybody has phones. I don't know if everybody just turns on
their TVs.
Do people turn on their TVs when they get home from work every day?
His dad does.
My dad, generation. I think it's a generational thing. I truly believe. I think you're bringing up a point that I was really excited to talk about, and that's when I was growing up, screen time had it was very limited, but it was also very exciting. Right. And it was always and often a family or group experience. It was like, can we? It was always, and something that you guys talked about quite, a lot just a second ago was like, man, these kids walk around with their iPads. This is mine. And it's like, I'm going to watch this person do this thing. It's very isolating.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it was better, but oh my gosh. I remember when, I was a little bit older, but when Lost came out, dude, this blew my mind. My family and I would sit down to watch Lost. It was like the popcorn was popped. Like you record like the first 10 minutes of it so you can fast forward the commercials. We were pros.
You guys were rich.
We were
too.
never that advanced. Wow.
Yeah. Well, apparently
we did go to Culver's before Lost episodes.
That was our thing.
We bring up Culver's way too much.
Culver's.
No, I love that. Yeah. Are you secretly sponsored by Culver? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
I just say I make the joke that you were rich because I too didn't have cable growing up, even though my parents could have afforded it. But do you remember when the whole record your show and skip the commercials was even a thing?
I do.
I remember other people having
I remember other people.
Yeah.
I never got that.
This guy.
Yeah, I never reached that level of awesomeness.
That was when I was 14, 15 though. I'm not talking
Should we all bow down?
Mm-hmm.
Really? I mean,
how was that, Joey? Was it amazing?
Did you enjoy all that extra time where you didn't have to spend?
Yeah, we all had to watch. We all had to watch our commercials.
I'm so happy.
We were a very disciplined family. We would wait 10 minutes, and while the show was started. You know what I mean? It's because it was live, and we would,
we would wait till the show started to pop our popcorn so we could, skip the commercials. What a life! What
a piece of that too is I agree with Joey.
TV was different.
Everyone's watching it together.
It was coming out 24 or Lost or Survivor.
Well, at the same time
Survivor
too,
came out.
Since it was all in, now it's all a la carte. It's like what do I want to watch? What do I want to binge?
You can have whatever.
And you talk about Lost. Everybody was watching Lost.
Everyone.
So if the Lost episode happened, that's what you're talking about tomorrow with almost everybody you know.
Yep.
And so there was that community. Actually, I've had this discussion with my brother. I don't know why we're getting into Lost, but I actually think Lost was one of the last shows to actually give that community aspect of just regular weekly TV programming just on that level. I mean, it's happened a couple of times, I'm sure, but just where everybody's watching the same thing and then they actually talk about it the next day. There was that community aspect. Now it's all broken up. It's like, hey, have you watched that show? No, I haven't watched that show. I don't know. Maybe one day we'll get to it. And then we'll watch all 17 episodes on Friday. I
feel that. I mean, we do that.
I will say
we've done it.
Because when it's so funny, Elizabeth mentioned, I think, or I'm just dreaming, that you guys watched Lost and the Culver thing.
It's in the book.
There you go.
In the book.
And
is it?
I didn't plan that. I actually was so obsessed with Lost. When we got married, you hadn't seen it.
Oh,
right?
Man.
No, I never watched it.
And so I was like, we're going to watch this. And we've watched it probably together 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
I've watched it way too many times. I just think it's some of the greatest television. Okay, we don't get down this too deep because I just
I could go all day. Let's go.
I just think, and I love what you said because I agree. It was one of the last times I remember there being a show that it was worth waiting a whole week for the next episode to come out. Yeah. Nowadays, when people try to do that, I'm so used to, I can watch 10. So much would happen in an episode of Lost. It was just insane. But yet you didn't make a ton of progress. It was crazy. It was a crazy show. The backstory thing was revolutionary. I loved that. I love that show. But we watched it together and that was awesome. But the TV and screen time just totally looked different back in the day. Survivor would come out and it was exactly, it was like water cooler talk, right? When you were a kid and you were at the playground, you're at school, you're at the lunch line or whatever, you're talking about a show you watched. I don't know, there's something different about that.
just the whole you're sharing an experience. Like I remember one of my fondest memories, like my dad was a pastor and we would come home on Wednesday nights after he would, do his Bible study or something. And we would go home and we would watch Deep Space Nine, which Star Trek show. It was just like, it was something we did together. And it was a show that came on every week. Like, I don't know why we watched that. It's what Dad wanted to watch, but we watched it together. And I don't know if that's happening as much as it used to. And I'm not even saying that that's probably the activity we should have been doing together. Maybe we could have been building something. I don't know. Sure. But yeah, I do think a lot of that is lost in the culture today. But not that we watch anything at all.
You don't even own a TV, please. Yeah. We all know. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think I like this question because I just think it brings up hey, what as a society have we kind of slipped into this like ultra convenient space and lost the ability to choose an intentional path instead? So that's kind of why I asked, like, what else should be crunchier in modern America specifically?
When you sent that ahead of time, I kind of was thinking, okay, screen time, but also what you just said, the reliance on convenience.
Yeah.
That's a huge one.
And it infiltrates every aspect of society. And it's frustrating because it's like a silent killer. It's Joey talks, you said today, the comfort creep. We live in a 4-bedroom house. How could we ever live in a smaller house? It's like, I don't know.
I had fast forwarding commercials. It's just I couldn't do it any other way.
He's the ultimate comfort creep. No, I'm just kidding. But there are things that we do intentionally, and people think we're insane because we want to work harder for what we have. And that is part of this, quote, crunchy lifestyle, right? Is like, well, why would you do that if I'll never forget, a neighbor was like, oh, that's funny that you hunt because like the grocery store has meat too. And Joey's like, it's so much more than that. Like, it's so much more than
that is just. Anyways,
he was joking, but like that is a sentiment that some people have, right? There's a convenient way. Yeah. We've built our society on the fact that we are efficient and we are ready to go and we have mastered this thing so that we can have the ultimate leisure and comfort in life. And it's like, that's the goal. But for people who say that's not the goal, actually the hard work and the reward is the goal, then like your life looks different. So, yeah. And any other thing?
That's interesting what you just brought up. Because of that reliance on convenience, we're becoming so disconnected from our food and from each other, but definitely from our food. I recently saw a reel of this girl who was saying that she had a lemon tree outside. Have you seen this?
Yes,
she didn't even know that she could just go outside and pick the lemons. She went to the grocery store and bought a bag of lemons because she thought there had to be something done to the lemons before you could consume them. You couldn't just pick them off the tree. She is a grown-up, an adult, saying she didn't know you could just pick lemons off a tree and eat them. And that is so sad. That is so sad. And it's not her fault.
It's not her fault.
Wow.
It's not her fault. But we are so disconnected from our food. Kids don't know where food comes from. And especially because it's hyper processed half the time. So where could it even come from? But yeah, I mean, I think that's so important that we teach our kids where our food is coming from, how it's grown, the work that's put in. Definitely. And it all seems to fall back on that reliance on convenience.
100%. Yeah, I saw that. And then I saw a follow-up. I don't know if you follow the Black Forager. She's got a pretty big account, but she did this wonderful, detailed description of like the reason you I don't know how old that girl was, probably in her 30s. The reason you as a 30-year-old don't know that you can eat the fruit right off your tree is because of all of these different things. And it was a lot about like, we have been so separated from our food and our food system, almost intentionally so. If there's a reliance on food, then you can kind of gather people around that same thing. And so the comments were like, yeah, she's not the only one, And I think a lot of people were like, it sounds insane, but at the same time, how many people are like, are you sure I can just take this egg from the chicken coop and crack it and fry it? Like, are you sure that's cool? Or are you sure I can just take this milk from the udder and drink it straight? Like, are you sure? To me, I'm like, I'm surprised, but also I'm not,
Yeah.
So it's just one of those odd things. Yeah, I want to know, kind of moving into, we talked about screen time, which actually was a piece of my hot takes. I think hot takes are always fun. I'll never forget you did a reel on essential oils and VOCs, and everyone freaked out, right?
Oh,
So
my
I want
goodness.
to hear your hot take on essential oils. Yeah, so give it to us straight.
Okay, hot take.
That was a dark day. Sorry.
It's
That was a dark day when we posted that video.
I definitely think essential oils are overused. Of course, they are effective and medicinal. I believe that so I kind of went on this essential oil journey. That was like one of my beginner crunchy things. I started using oils for treating headaches or whatever, It seems so easy. Like, okay, you're stressed, smell some lavender. You're wanting to clean something, use thieves. Like, it's just so easy.
Yep.
All while diffusing it at the same time.
But then I started reading about, like, okay, listen, essential oils are antiviral, antimicrobial, and what are you over here trying to do? Build up your microbiome, right? And then here you are, like, using essential oils for everything, basically affecting your microbiome because they are so potent and so powerful. So then I was like, anti-essential oil. Like, I'm not using them in anything. I'm totally done with them. Like, got rid of all of them, which was not smart because I had a lot of money invested in those. And I've ended up calling my mom like, hey, Mom, I take it back. Can I have that bottle of Thieves back? We're kind of struggling over here with a cold, and I'd kind of like to use that. So I definitely think, like, they are useful and powerful, but we need to treat them like medicine instead of just using them like air fresheners.
Totally.
So yeah, I've kind of flopped, but yes, but they also aren't very sustainable.
Yeah, it takes a lot of plant product to produce this tiny amount of oil.
There's like no way before this age that we could have done that. And when people are like, well, essential oils were used in the Bible, it's like, well, it was a different kind of oil. It's like,
did they use 7 billion rose bushes to make one drop of rose liquid? I don't know what it's called.
It's like, yeah, that was olive oil, probably with something infused in it.
Right.
So I just think there's been, and people have like played on the mother's emotions of wanting to be a provider for their family and contribute, the whole MLM thing. There's just been some like shady stuff and promises made through certain blends.
They're getting you now. They're coming after you now.
I know.
You're putting your name on some lists right now.
Oh my goodness.
Well, no, this is perfect because this was my second question of like, let's talk about the crunchy influencer culture, right? Because the one thing about I too, I like bought into the essential oils and I was like, oh, this is so great. And like, these are amazing. And I see a lot more people moving into like herb infused oils if they want a scented product, which I think is probably more reminiscent of what we would have used in the past.
That's what I'm on that train. I love it.
Yeah, same. But for me, the other piece of the essential oil side specifically is that there were so many MLMs or companies that were promoting this lifestyle utilizing essential oils, and it was completely based on consumerism. Consume, consume, consume. Buy $50 worth a month. It'll pay for it by the time the next person buys their $50 a month. And at one point, I had to look around and be like, okay, if the entire world, right? Because people would always be like, I'm not going to stop until essential oils are in every home. But I was like, if that really happened, we would have so many plastic bottles, so many little tiny glass bottles. What do we even do with? We'd have so much packaging waste. We'd have so many people. It'd have to be like Amazon trucks on steroids just delivering everyone's stuff. And then there were all these fights about, whose oil was really superior and what was what. And the industry was so like self-made that no one could really check anything because everyone's standards were built into the company's policies. I think we all know what we're talking about here.
Essential oil drama.
The essential oil drama is real, okay?
So
it's real.
The oil war of 2013.
It's a hot take. It's oil wars. I actually think they did a documentary.
If you're not watching this, the way that Jason will smirk when a new topic gets brought up, I have to like move away from the mic because it's so funny because his brain probably is just like, ooh, this is a good one.
There's so
like,
much.
Would be a good video.
There's so much happening.
Yes, please do that. Yeah.
so good.
His wheels are turning.
Yeah,
It's like content creation. I'm ready for it. But let's lighten up on this. Like, I don't want to attack essential oil people specifically, but the influencer culture. I believe there is something so dangerous, and I have said this from day one, because let's talk about prying on the mother's emotions of wanting to not only do the best they can for their sweet little baby, but also be a provider, right? And when you promote a product that the only way you can afford buying said product is by receiving it for free from the company or by sales made off your affiliate link, and you're pitching that as a must-have product. You have to have this to have XYZ. You have to have this to improve your hormone health. You have to have this to be the best mom possible. By the way, it's $50 a month, and the only way I get it is because it's sent to me for free because I'm an influencer and I'm telling you about it. It's such a tricky trap, and I think it happens in the real food space, and I think it happens in the crunchy wellness space more than people know. And I also have a lot of friends who their livelihood is based on sharing genuine content that is heartfelt, and they're not trying to swindle people. But there's a delicate balance, I think. So I just love to hear how can we as consumers of information be diligent in our consumption of these types of accounts or these types of messages?
Yeah, I talk about that in my book a lot. Whenever I reached 50,000 followers on Instagram, it was like I immediately started getting all these product offers for free. I actually took a company up on this like glass orb thing that I had seen all the other influencers talking about how you must have this glass orb. Do you have a glass orb? Do you know
are you asking me?
Is that what it's called? A glass orb?
No, that's not what it's called. I'm not using it.
Are you talking about the does it glow green perhaps? Yeah, I did.
It makes your water.
You bought one?
Something.
It can structure your water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought it off of a friend's code, ironically. And then we had on August from Tech Wellness, and I asked her about this harmonizing device, and she was like, I would get rid of that. And I was like, if we're talking about the same thing, then we're talking about the same thing. But
we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
I have they sent me a thing, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna, like, my life is about to change. Everything, because I finally have this thing that everybody's talked about, how it's so amazing. And they're like, and if you just share about it, then we can get you a link. And, it's just like, what if it is life transforming, So I really, like, legitimately went in with positivity about this product and high hopes. But then I also was like, let's be honest with myself, because now I'm like sort of in this position of power, and I come from a background where finances were always super tight. And even in our marriage, we have like struggled financially. So to make a purchase, I would stand at the grocery store and debate something over $3, honestly.
And this thing was like, what, like $1,000 or something?
$1,000, $1,200 or something.
Yeah.
So this was like diamonds to me. And I really wanted to think about, like, is this actually making a positive change in my life enough for me to promote? So I just wanted to make sure that whatever I was promoting was actually life-changing.
Totally.
And I didn't notice any differences. So I sent it back to the company and said, yeah, I won't be promoting your product. But that sort of just opened my eyes. It was that situation that made me go, okay, Like, I know I didn't have that thing plugged in wrong, but
Mhm.
all these influencers told me that it was life-changing. And now, like, in the last year, I haven't seen a single one of them mention it
I know.
again.
I
So
know.
it can't be that life-changing. Like, it was a product that was offered and taken, and maybe they could tell themselves that it affected their life for the better. I don't think influencers are necessarily out to get people.
No, it's very, very tempting.
It
Companies,
is.
they, what was one other? It was an oat milk thing.
Oh, yeah, we got it.
Which had canola oil in it, by the way.
Probably Oatly.
Offered like a pretty
Probably Oatly,
big,
man.
It was Oatly. Am I allowed to say that? You said
yeah.
it.
I mean, we call them out all the time. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think they offered us.
I'm not sure. It was a lot.
Several $1,000s to make a 30-second video on just TikTok, not even our other platforms. It was so tempting.
Like, we could just do this. I wasn't advocating. I was just in my brain. I'm thinking we could just make this 30-second
like
video.
A swap one time with Oatly. It won't be a big deal. Like,
I know.
It is tasty.
That was kind of a moment for us where it was kind of a defining, because it was pretty early on. It was sort of a defining moment for us. It's like, no, this is growing, and it's growing a lot, and I can already tell that people trust you.
Yeah,
like,
I don't want to break that trust.
Yeah.
Once you break it, it is broken. It is gone.
Yeah.
So I am so careful about the products that I promote. I only promote things that I actually use, actually enjoy. And I just don't know that everybody is like that. And people do have to make a living too.
Yeah.
So
it's hard.
It's just really tricky. They're kind of put in a tough spot because influencers give so much. They create so much content for free, offer so much information for free. It is nice to get a little kickback, especially if it's a product that they really do love. Like, I know a couple influencers who use things that they really love, but they also intentionally put, like, in their question boxes, tell me more about this, when that's not, like, nobody actually sent that question. They just want an opportunity to talk about it.
Totally.
All the tricks are coming
happens,
out.
you know?
It does.
Because they're making money, and maybe they exaggerate a little about how much they love it, because how are you going to sell something if you're like, well, it's okay?
I think the pressure is off of us a little bit because we are a comedy account. And so, like, we can do a video where it's about a product and we're fighting off the Balrog from Lord of the Rings or whatever. And it's still promoting this product, and we do like the product a lot.
Yeah, I use Earthly like it's going out of business.
Yeah, we love it. But at the same time, we have that a little bit of distance from it to where, you know, what was I?
It's not like Emily.
It's still a joke.
Yeah, it's a joke. And
so, but we don't take. I mean, I can't believe it's not butter approached us and offered us $11,000. $11,000 to promote I Can't Believe It's Not Butter. Like, I almost wanted to do it because I loved I Can't Believe It's Not Butter when I was a kid. We used to have the spray bottle version. That's what my family was into. I would just go to the fridge, a couple squirts as an after school snack.
In the mouth?
Yes.
Right in.
Straight to the mouth.
Oh, girl. Okay.
I remember we emailed them back, and I just said, and I was feeling like, have you ever heard of anti-marketing? So that's where you make a company will make a commercial for themselves that it's just like talking about how making fun of themselves. Like, can we talk negatively about you? And it'll still sort of,
it's going to get your name out there.
I'm not sure.
Think you got ghosted. That's true. I sat at a dinner one time, and I was surrounded by some influencers who they had. A lot of it was TikTok oriented, but it was these big major food brands, and I mean thousands of dollars for like one reel. And I just think, again, I'm not shaming the influencer. I think if that is it's such a skill to produce content. It really is. And it takes so much effort. And I understand the background effort that it takes. But I also think from a consumer side, social media, it's only recently that we have to add like #ad, because from a consumer, it's really hard to know behind the scenes, like, is this a partnership deal? Are they being paid to say this? Is this something they actually love? Are they friends with the producer? Like, we went to the point where like I was like, I won't do partnership, like affiliate links, really, because one, I'm bad at it. I don't want to like pop on my stories and be like, this is a product I use. That we were like, let's just start our own shop. So we started Hazelmeyer Goods as like we hired a soap maker to make large soap, and we hired a basket weaver to make.
It's the easiest way to do it. Let me tell you.
It's not it's so hard. But we were like, we want to create a shop, and people keep asking us for the product, but like, I don't want to stand behind a company, and then especially with all these companies putting out widely political, divisive things, like taking weird stances on things that have nothing to do with their product. I was like, imagine if I tied myself to that brand, and then they came out with this blog article from the owner, and I'm like, what? And then everyone would be mad at me because
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yes, I think you probably do. It's in the soap category. I won't say what it is, but it's just, it's so, we live in a really weird era where commercials aren't just the only thing selling to us, and that our social media accounts are selling to us, and that you have to be a hyper vigilant consumer of content and of product, and to be able to understand that there's some gray area where people are, maybe they're loving a product, but they're also getting a kickback. How do you reconcile that? It's up to you. But
people don't realize how challenging monetizing content creation actually can be.
That's another thing.
And I think that's where it's easy to look at, and that's where I loved how you guys navigated that. And I'm on the other side, right? Like, I'm like watching you crush, and I'm thinking, okay, well, now what, right? You get a bunch of people's ears, get a bunch of people's eyes. Now what?
Yeah. And
the easiest thing to do is someone that has a ton of money and a product that comes to you. It is. So Jason, it's tempting because you're like, man, I've put all this effort in, and this has been a passion area of mine. But I think, that defining moment of, is this going to be my thing, or is this going to be theirs? And I agree with that 100%.
Well, especially when you're making like short form content too, which it does not pay.
Yeah.
People think it does, but it does not. So I mean, you're almost, I don't know if we would get into that, but
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It is hard because this is our full-time job. So we do take paid collaborations, but we try to be very transparent about them. And we also only do collaborations that we truly, truly do stand behind. But it would be hard, especially as a smaller account. You're not necessarily able to get partnerships with the brands that you totally love. So you're like, well, I'll try this out. So yeah, it's really tricky, but it's hard. You do have to be hyper vigilant as a consumer. And I am so aware of it now as a creator that it cracks me up. And when people don't post on a collaborated post that it is a collaboration, I get a little burn up at this point. But
it's like false advertising to me.
Yeah.
Have you guys done a video on that, by the way? Because that would be such a fire episode, or like a little video of like Emily trying to film like a collaboration, and like, oh, this is so unnatural, and then but it's like one that you actually love, and you're like, I really do love it, I just don't know how to convey it, and then I could totally see the whole scene playing out in my head.
Taking notes for our next
Jason's like, I'm gonna do it.
Jason's like, I've had that for years.
You better tag me in
Back
that.
off.
No, I'm just kidding. No, this is such a good conversation. I hope no one thinks that we are trying to bash the content creator, because Emily and I are both content creators, and we would not be bashing ourselves. But it's just a nice way to keep it transparent, right? Keep things open, and everyone's trying to work hard and provide value. And even in a comedy channel, you guys are providing value, which I think is a really cool tie-in back to your book, because that is exactly what you've done. You've built this whole audience and platform around kind of poking fun at this way of life, but you're also like, hey, but really there's some value here and there's some benefits from living this way. And here's a very non-judgmental way to go about it and, you know, not make your personality totally suck, which I think is hilarious. So that's a great part of the book too. What else do you have for her?
The last thing is like a wrapping up question would be, and just, was there ever a crunchy endeavor that maybe was
a fail,
a miss, or shortly afterwards we recognized we're not doing that again?
I have not tried to drink my own urine, if that's what you're trying to get me to admit.
That was
if we started that one, it would be a fail. I can tell you right now. Yeah,
I'm really interested. Like, is that a thing?
Joey's unaware. Yes, it's a thing. It's very odd.
It's in right now, and I'm not going to bash it because I haven't tried it.
You're not gonna. No. Not if you ever want me to kiss you again.
What?
That's one thing that drives Jason crazy. My consumption of raw garlic. He can smell me from the other room whenever I have chewed up garlic.
It's a fail, but she keeps doing it. So I don't know.
We would have gotten a quicker response if we asked Jason that.
There are people that are drinking their own urine.
Yes.
Yeah, what's the deal with that?
Why on earth would someone do that?
You know, Bear Grylls did that on his show, but it was a survival technique.
That was
He's
like, I don't want to die.
You can only do this one time, okay? And you drink it, and it'll be fine once. Don't do it twice, or you'll die. And then, of course, Crunchy Moms are over here like, we drink our own urine all the time.
No, they're fermenting their urine even. Like, you pee in a jar, put it out in the sun for maybe like 3 weeks.
You're gonna have to put the explicit tag on your on this episode now. Like,
fermented urine.
So no, I have not done that. I'm trying to think if there's anything that really just didn't work out for us.
Are you still using limes as deodorant? Is that your go-to?
I think it works really great.
Jason?
I mean, you stink, but no.
You smell like sweaty limes.
You smell like body odor and limes. So it's like, that's interesting.
Something I say to people though, like, what's wrong with the smell of your body? And Jason's like, I don't think you're going to win people over that way.
Sort of an indicator that you need to get clean, right? I mean,
it's also like, are you working out? Are you like, you know, are you just bringing a lime to the gym? Like, I don't know how that works. The deodorant piece is always challenging.
I am totally invested in limes. Have you tried it?
No, I haven't.
I can't imagine it works for everybody.
Here's the real question, and I don't know if you've ever shared this publicly, but do you shave your armpits, or is it an unshaven lime juice?
I'm unshaved.
I have shared this. I have.
It was to her. Okay. Gotcha.
We as if my armpits are like
my armpits and I.
My
armpits and I. We prefer to.
That's a whole account in and of itself.
Yeah.
My armpits and I.
There's a lot of laziness in my crunchy choices sometimes. Like, I just don't really think to shave my armpits half the time. So, like, a lot of times my armpits have quite a bit of hair because I'm just not really thinking about it. I don't really care. Doesn't seem to bother Jason. So
do the limes burn? Does like the acidity?
No, and it doesn't even burn me after I do shave. Like, I've done it when I've shaved.
That's where I would say that might not be the case for everybody. I don't know. It's a very acidic thing, so isn't it? Isn't that? Yeah, I mean,
I've never felt a burning sensation.
I mean, it's a citric acid, so 100%. It's got some acid going on.
I mean, try it, but
yeah.
Didn't hear from us. Yeah.
Actually, I did try it not that long ago.
You did?
Yeah. You were gone, I think, with forest friends or something. I'm like, oh man, I need to shower, but I didn't want to. And there was a lime on the counter, and I tried it, and it actually smelled like BO with lime.
No,
it actually did. It did not work for me.
Jason's BO smells great though. So.
Maybe you haven't detoxed properly, or you're eating too much processed food. If your BO,
well, my son looked at me the other day and said, "Dad, your eyes are turning green." And Emily looks at me and says, that means you're probably full of toxins or something.
I
like
heard
that.
somewhere that if your eyes are green, your toxic load is super high, but my eyes are super green. So I'm like, well, darn.
Can't be true.
That was from spraying. I can't believe it's not butter in your mouth for all those years.
Standing outside the
It's not
cigarettes,
butter.
watching TV, just eating some
All the
butter.
secondhand smoke from the window watching.
It's totally true.
It's a snack on the go, dude. She's ready.
Oh, that's so good. See, if we didn't ask the crunchy fail question, we'd never get to the lime in
And
the
I will
armpit.
say this, natural family planning, I mean, we do have a second child.
Yeah.
So
Wasn't
sometimes
yeah. But it's not a
That's a
fail.
win.
That's not a fail.
It's a surprise.
That's a win.
win.
That's a win.
That's
That's
a
a
win.
win.
That's a win.
Do we have any fails? We always ask this question.
I mean, I failed sourdough a lot before I figured it out, but like that's not a good example.
I think the real thought here is like you tried something, you're like, that wasn't it. Like
The
I think that,
glass
like
orb.
orb was probably for us probably something.
I mean, I think for me, the assumption that I have to pay more for something that is natural and it's worth the dollar for me was a fail because it swept me into thinking I had to buy into whole systems, like these whole like, ooh, if you can get this one multi-purpose cleaner with all these refillable bottles and it's amazing and you just invest one time and it's like, I just clean my counters with diluted Castile soap, like that's it. So
Yeah.
I don't need anything else. So I think for me in the beginning, it was like I was so drawn to the packaging and very influenced by what other people were using because I was like, ooh, a ready-made thing that's like perfect. And I will say now that I'm thinking about it though too, I've really struggling with laundry lately because I work out a lot and I don't like wash my workout clothes right away. So I wash all my clothes together and I just had to rewash my clothes 2 times. And still there's like some things that don't smell fresh and I don't know what to do. I'm already putting vinegar in my laundry. I don't know what to do.
I'm not
Are
gonna lie,
you
she
washing
smells
it
like
super, super, super hot?
Yes.
Like lava hot? Yeah.
I'm putting it on the hot thing and I'm putting it on soak.
Hmm.
And I'm using Charlie soap.
dude, she smells so sour. Like she'll walk by me and I'll be like, dude, it's not, it isn't it.
Well, I
Is
changed the
it the
clothes.
sour smell that you're talking about? Like if
It's
the
the
clothes have
sour
been sitting in there
laundry
too
smell,
long?
but
Yes.
they weren't sitting in there for too long. It's because it's my workout clothes.
But that's how it smells.
I need limes in the armpit, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Why don't you put your clothes outside in the sunshine first for a little bit?
Cook them up a little bit.
Maybe
And
not
let
every
'em-
time.
Another crunchy thing is like bum sunning. You could go outside after you work out. Take off your workout clothes. Get a little bum sun.
Get a little bum sun.
And then
it's
leave
a
the
two
clothes out
first.
there.
Joey's
Let
so
'em, like-
confused.
Yeah,
People,
like I live in an apartment complex. I get it.
booty is out and everyone can see it. Yeah.
What is this?
I have
Is
never
like-
done that either.
You
So
you
just tell
can
that.
sun your
Bum.
genitals if you want, or your bum. Well, I think it's either.
Yeah.
For what reason?
I don't know. They say
For sunlight.
there's
Better
some
vitamin
benefits.
D absorption or something.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, dude.
Your shoulders aren't good enough.
All
So,
of my failures, because I feel like I've had a bunch. I feel like tend to be that I'm uneducated or if I'm behind the game. It's like buying the canola oil, right? It was probably organic canola oil,
It
if I'm honest.
was.
So it's like it was.
If there's
There was
such
a there's
still rancid.
but like there's this. I would go to the store and I would really be trying, right? And the failure comes out of a desire to succeed, and therefore, but then you don't, right? And I would. What was man? I feel like I just really don't want to rip a bunch of brands today, but like there was these bars that I was buying, and I was thinking to myself like, yo, these are like a ton of protein and they're delicious. I was like, I'm gonna buy like 100 of these things and I'm just gonna live off them because they're organic. Clearly, this is a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
And they're basically just like seed oil
yeah.
bars. And I don't know. They're just learnings. It takes time. And so for me, all my failures are just the process along the way. And I feel like I'm going to continue to have those sorts of failures. So anyways,
I
don't
definitely
buy
get greenwashed all the time. Like it's just, I go to the store by myself. I'm getting greenwashed. It's really fun though, when occasionally she gets greenwashed and it's just like,
It has happened. And I'm like,
yes.
how did this happen?
it's like that literally has a green label on it, and you went for it because you thought it was
No. Most recently, what I've been really confused about, and so like organic cotton clothing, and then having like an O-Tex, am I saying that right? Oh, I'm not saying it right. Or like Green Guard certification, you know, all these fabric certifications that leave out like all the harmful whatever. But like an organic cotton piece of clothing that doesn't have that. So are they still adding like formaldehyde post
organic
production
formaldehyde
and all this stuff? Like just because it says organic cotton doesn't mean they're not treating it with other things. That was one thing I got greenwashed on recently because I'm thinking you have to have those certifications if you want it to be, I don't know, who knows anymore. So.
Well, and I don't know, you might have to reach out to the company, but then I also think about like you can have organically grown produce at the farmer's market that's not certified because they can't afford the certification.
Oh,
so it's like, is it falling in that camp?
Yeah.
Or is it too big of an industry to have little players that fall in that camp, and so it's an all or nothing? Who is gonna know? Yeah, you got to give yourself grace in the crunchy journey. You really do.
It's true. And I buy a lot of stuff secondhand. So like I put up a question box because I went live on Instagram and I said, do you have any questions? And somebody said, what is your couch made of? And I thought that I knew because it's velvet and I thought velvet was made of silk. And I got this couch secondhand and I looked on the website and I felt good about buying it because it was still available for sale. Anyway, I called. It was a couch from Anthropologie. I ended up calling and I was like, can I get a specific breakdown of what the fabric components are and if it's treated with anything? And she was like, actually, we don't even have access to that. And I'm like, can I have the number to the company who manufactures the couch? And she's like, I'm not allowed to share that information. I'm like, so I can't even know what's in my couch? So, yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. Well, you have to have grace. So, I mean, I'm not going to sweat my couch. I'm just going to buy a new couch tomorrow.
But like we talked about,
I'm just kidding.
But we've been looking at like buying a new couch because of that, and like we
not because of that.
Well,
not
because
of buying a new couch because our couch is so uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, that too. But like, and then you get on these websites, and it has all these wonderful certifications, and it's like, the details are in what are they leaving out. Like the things that they actually still have in there. It's like, we are this certified. This doesn't have these.
Yeah, one of them was like,
I don't really PFAS or something.
Yeah, it wasn't saying that it was PFA free. But it was like free of all this other stuff that made you think like, well, it's probably PFA free.
And had certifications and different things. Yeah. But you look at the certifications and it doesn't say that it doesn't have those things in it. So it's like the details, a lot of the details are what they aren't saying when it comes to greenwashing, for sure.
Does the brand Avocado, do they make couches and such?
That's a mattress company, right?
They make mattresses. They do make some furniture.
Do they?
But not like couches. It's like dressers and side tables. But
you might have to make your own couch. And you can stuff it with all that wool that I know you have access to.
It's like perfect.
So
this is all
build a frame. Build a frame. Stuff some stuff in the cushion. I think you
raise chickens, pluck the chickens, use the feathers.
It's goose.
See, and feather. Here I was thinking my couch was pretty crunchy because it's down. It's down cushion. So I was like, well, look at that, a natural material. But then I read that they treat down feathers with formaldehyde.
Stop it. Oh, because it's part of the goose or whatever.
I don't know.
Dude,
so
people on the internet are savages though, also for asking you what your couch is made of. Like that is just people will never stop.
That's another Tuesday. Yeah.
What's the craziest thing you've ever been questioned on aside from your couch?
At this point, we're just like,
what's your house made of?
Swipe.
People are constantly coming at me. I get all the craziest DMs.
I do think a lot of it is genuine and coming from a place because they're researching it themselves. And they're actually asking for your opinion. But it is a lot. The craziest, though, I don't really know.
One time I was telling about this tradition of, have you read the book The Night Tree? by Eve Bunting. It's like this really sweet book about this family who goes out before Christmas and they decorate a tree in the woods with like apple slices and things like that. And I was talking about that and people came at me for feeding wildlife at all.
Oh my.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, well, now my little family's night tree tradition is marred by the knowledge that I shouldn't do that.
Because you're putting apple slices on a wild tree.
You're going to condition the robins.
Yes.
Yeah.
What if there was a natural apple tree in that forest at one point?
There wasn't.
But maybe
Don't
there
disrupt
could
the
have
habitat
been.
like that. Come on.
Oh my gosh. That would get exhausting.
Anyhow, before we trigger them too much more.
I know.
As we start to wrap up here, Emily, Jason, thank you guys so much for coming on. Give us a quick rundown of where folks can find you so they can ask you about your couches and apple slices and such.
Tell me everything I'm doing wrong. On Really Very Crunchy. That's the name of our platform. It's on every social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, Facebook. Are those all of them? So Really Very Crunchy. And then if you're interested in checking out my book, it is called Really Very Crunchy. You can search it on any online retailer that sells books, wherever your favorite place to buy. And even thrift books.
You're even on...
I'm on thrift books.
Do pre-orders on thrift books make sense?
No, because don't you have to be thrifted? Or is it a new book?
It's a new book. I mean,
buy
I
off
just
of
thought
thrift
it was
books.
funny. You're going to order on thrift books? There's 50
I buy
available.
off of thrift books. I that's where I buy my books because I'm like, I don't want to buy from Amazon. I'm going to buy from thrift books. So I think
maybe it's a longer waiting period that you have to wait till somebody donates it or something.
They've read it and they're done with it. Thrifted.
We've already lined up some donations.
We anticipate 50 people are going to return it or something.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No, that's fantastic. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I concur. The book is fantastic. Everyone needs to go get it. It's available March 12th. Cool.
Coming up.
Awesome. That is coming up.
Emily, Jason, thank you guys so much for coming on. And this has been fantastic. I'm sure we've chewed up enough of your time, digging into your brains. But thank you again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. This was fun.
Thank you so much.
So fun. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
And with that, Emily and Jason of Really Very Crunchy have left the virtual chat.
They are indeed really very crunchy, but not in a bad way. There was such a fun conversation. I hope everyone enjoyed it. And
if you have not seen their stuff,
it's hilarious.
You have to.
You got to go follow. You got to grab the book.
YouTube, Instagram, the socials, wherever you are. Really Very Crunchy. Really Very Crunchy. And
hit them up.
Yeah, it's so good. They're hilarious.
I love it.
The Valentine's one. I watched that before we jumped on.
You did that really annoying like cackle laugh that you do where it's like really high pitched and it hurts my ears, but I know you think something's really funny. Yeah, you did that to that one. I was like, I don't like that.
Oh my gosh. It was so funny. Very, very big fan of the Valentine's post.
Yeah.
Anyhow, hey, check them out. If you wanted to hear more from us, right? If you wanted to ask us about our couch, you could do that. Totally. I don't have much information about it.
None. Zero.
But you can find us on Instagram. We're there. I'm at Joey Hazelmeyer Elizabeth, or Liz. She's at Liz Hazelmeyer and at Homegrown_education. We have books that you can buy to learn more about real food. You can find those at homegrowneducation.org. We have a Substack where we release exclusive content.
15 to 30 minute episodes, just straight to the point on a specific topic. The only way you can access it is by being a member of our Substack community, which is $8 a month or $6 broken out if you pay for the whole year.
So go check that out. Go get on the Substack and get that content. It's awesome stuff. And join the conversation with us because we want to hear from you about those different discussions that we're having. We also have a products business because we just couldn't stop.
Can't stop, won't stop.
HazelmeyerGoods.com. And because you probably can't spell that, we made it easy for you. ShopVH.com. Coffee, tea, soap, sourdough products, ceramic mugs that are just like
handmade by my friend Carrie.
Huge. Go check it out. ShopVH.com. And until next time, that's a wrap.